The wax seal on the bottle was perfect. The cork had one pinprick in it. My loves, I want you to sit with that for a second. One hole, thin as a hair, and the only person in that mansion who saw it was the woman they treated like furniture. Her name is Dr. Naomi Bennett, 30 years old, black, American, and the best spinal cord injury neurorehabilitation physiotherapist money could drag across an ocean. The one they call when the surgeons have already said never again. 14 months in the CO estate, counting reps on cold marble because nobody would buy her a rubber mat. Her patient is Seo Taehyun, 37. They call him the Quiet One. Chairman of the ports of Incheon, black koi carp inked down the left side of his neck, a bespoke Italian suit, and a bullet's worth of nothing below the waist. His family calls him a symbol of weakness. His mother-in-law's voice from the doorway. The Americans send us a nurse and charge us like a surgeon. Down the hall, a 4-year-old's sneakers flash red and blue across the floor. She calls him Papai. Nobody taught her not to. Aigu. 11 days ago, Naomi felt something in that man's calf she never wrote down. He'd known for 4 months. 2 people, 1 lie, and a wooden case arriving at the service door with a reception attached to it. Stay with me, because what happened in that living room, I still don't have the words for. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. 22, Naomi Bennett said, and pressed her thumb into the tendon behind Seo Taehyun's left knee. 6 in the morning. The rehab room on the 2nd floor of the Seo estate held nothing but a padded table, a bar bolted to the wall, and a marble floor cold enough to bite through the soles of her shoes. She had asked for rubber matting in her first week. 14 months later, she still counted reps on marble. 23. His leg came up, slow. Slower than a healthy man's, faster than a dead man's, and Naomi felt every centimeter of the difference through her palm. Deep chocolate skin over his shin, gold thread of a thin chain at her throat catching the lamp. The sleeve of her ivory shirt rolled to the elbow. She kept her eyes on the muscle and not on his face. Taehyun watched the ceiling. The koi carp inked down the left side of his neck moved when he swallowed. 24. You are counting wrong, he said. I'm counting slow. That is a different thing. She lowered his heel to the table and held it there. Big man, 2 meters of him when he still stood, shoulders that filled a doorway, arms built by 14 months of pushing a carbon fiber chair through rooms that were never designed for one. On the table he was a body she had to move. 2 more. You said 25. I changed my mind. The corner of his mouth did something that wasn't a smile and wasn't nothing. He gave her the 2. She ran her thumb down the calf on the way out of the last one. Standard. She had done it 400 times in this room. Muscle tone, temperature, the state of a limb that a bullet had taken out of a man's government 14 months ago. The calf was warm. Naomi held the pressure a half-second longer than the protocol asked for, watching nothing. Watching the wall. Then she let go and wrote nothing down, and the pen stayed in her pocket where it had been for 11 days. Her phone buzzed against the metal tray by the window. She let it. Naomi wiped her hands on the towel, went to the wall, brought the chair over, and set the brakes with her foot. He didn't wait for her to offer an arm. He never did. He took the rail, dropped his weight forward, and put himself into the seat in one movement that would have broken the shoulders of most men his age. 37 years old. Half of him working overtime for the other half. 10 minutes on the bar this afternoon, she said. 4, 8, 6, 8, Naomi said. Or I write 6 in the chart, and my supervisor calls Seoul and asks why. He looked at her then. Those eyes gave nothing back, ever. She had stopped waiting for them to. He rolled to the door. 8, he said, and was gone down the hallway, tires whispering on marble. She waited until the sound faded before she picked up the phone. One voicemail. Dr. Vivian Prescott, Baltimore. Naomi sat on the edge of the padded table and put the phone to her ear. Naomi, it's Vivian. That voice, flat, warm underneath, the voice of a woman who had signed too many things to be impressed by any of them. Board approved the position. Neuro rehab, attending track, your name on the door. It's real. But I need to be straight with you, honey. The line item expires in 9 days. 9. After that it goes back into the pool, and someone from Hopkins takes it, and neither of us ever sees it again. Call me. Call me today. The message ended. Naomi held the phone in her lap and looked at the marble. 9 days. $214,000 in student loans, sitting in an account in Maryland, growing in the dark like something in a jar. 18 months left on the contract that was paying it down. 18 months of counting reps in a house where nobody said her name. She did the arithmetic she had already done 11 times that week and got the same answer. Doctor. Lady Sohaerin stood in the doorway. 56, burgundy silk, chignon set so precisely it looked machined, diamonds at the ears, thin diamond line at the wrist. She had a way of arriving that made you feel you'd been discussed. Naomi stood, put the phone away. Ma'am. Hyarin's eyes moved over the room, the table, the towel, the bar on the wall, the way a woman looks at a rental she has no intention of buying. He was walking to that bar when we hired you, she said. He was not. 14 months. 14 months of a spinal injury that a bullet put there, Naomi said. Ma'am. The false smile arrived. It never reached anything. In Seoul, Hyarin said, we would have had 3 surgeons. 3 real ones. She let a beat sit there, and she let it sit long enough to be a choice. The Americans send us a nurse and charge us like a surgeon. The word landed exactly where it was aimed. Naomi kept her hands still at her sides. She had a full sentence ready, and she had had it ready for months. Doctorate of Physical Therapy, Johns Hopkins, board-certified neurologic specialist, the top 4% of a field this woman could not name, and she let it die where it always died, behind her teeth. 8 minutes on the bar this afternoon, Naomi said. That's new. 8 minutes. Hyarin repeated it the way you repeat a price you find funny. The bracelet slid a half-inch down her wrist, and she let it. My husband's brother built this family, doctor. Do you know what he would say about a man who is carried to a table by a woman? No, ma'am. No, Hyarin agreed. You would not. She turned, and then she stopped, because of the noise. Somewhere down the hall, small feet were coming at speed, and each step threw color across the wall. Red, then blue, then green, then red. The LED soles of a 4-year-old's sneakers firing off the marble like something at a carnival. Zoe Bennett crossed the doorway at a full run, butter-yellow dress, 2 afro puffs bouncing, gold bows barely holding, cardigan halfway off one shoulder. She did not stop. She did not look up. She was already shouting down the corridor. Popeye! Popeye! Wait! You said 8! Naomi's stomach dropped to floor. The flashing lights went past, turned the corner. Somewhere at the end of the hall, the tires stopped whispering. Hyarin stood very still in the doorway. She didn't ask what the word meant. She didn't have to. She had heard the tone, and the tone was a child running toward something that belonged to her. Your daughter, Hyarin said, runs in this house. I'll speak to her. You'll do more than speak to her. The chignon turned. The eyes came around last, the way they always did. A house has rooms, doctor. Everyone in it has one. Her room is the staff wing, and your room is that table. A pause, thin as the bracelet. Nobody gave either of you a hallway. She left. Naomi stood alone on the marble, with the towel still in her hand. Down the corridor, faintly, she heard her daughter's voice, high, delighted, in the middle of a negotiation with a man who had never once told her to go away, and she heard, underneath it, something she had been pretending not to hear for 2 months. She heard him answer her. Naomi folded the towel in half, then in half again. Then she went to find her child. The east corridor ended in a window and a bench nobody sat on, and that was where they were. Taehyun had stopped his chair at an angle to the glass. Zoe stood on the bench with her hands on the back of it, which put her eyes almost level with his, which she had clearly engineered. One sneaker flashed green against the wood every time she shifted her weight. Because 8 is more than 6, Zoe was saying. 8 is way more. That is true. So you do 8. That is not how the second part works. Zoe considered this with her whole face. Then she reached out and put one small hand flat on his shoulder, on the black wool, right where the koi came out of his collar, and she patted him twice, firmly, the way you settle a horse. You do 8, she said. I'll watch. Naomi's throat closed. She had seen her daughter do that exact thing to a stray cat in Baltimore, to a boy twice her size at a playground in Seoul, to a customs officer at Incheon who had come very close to smiling. Zoe did not have fear of large things. Zoe had never been given a single reason to. Zoe. The puffs came around. Both bows crooked now. Mamang, he said 6, but I said 8, and he... Get down. Something in it made the little face change. Zoe got down. The sneakers hit the marble, flashed red twice, and went quiet. Naomi crouched, put both hands on her daughter's arms. We don't run in the hallways. Sunwoo runs. Sunwoo works here. You work here. 4 years old. Naomi held on and made her voice come out level, because a level voice was the only thing she had left to give the child in this house. Baby, listen to me. We stay in our part of the house. That's all. That's the whole rule. Zoe looked past her mother's shoulder at the man in the chair. Then she looked back, and her chin came up half an inch, and Naomi watched 4 years of her own stubbornness arrive on a face that was not hers yet. But he's in this part. Behind her, Taehyun said nothing. Room, Naomi said. Now. Zoe went. The lights fired down the corridor and around the corner, and then the house swallowed them, and it was quiet, and Naomi stood up in front of a man who had heard the whole thing. She made herself look at him. She won't do it again. She calls me papai, he said. Not a question, not an accusation. He set the word down between them, the way you set down a card you have already decided to play, at a table, in front of a woman who has nothing in her hand. She's 4, Naomi said. She heard it in a cartoon. It doesn't mean anything. Taehyun looked at the corner where the lights had gone. 2 months, he said. Naomi's mouth opened and closed. He had counted. That was the piece that put her heart sideways. Not that he knew, but that he had been keeping the number, the way she kept the number of reps, the way she kept the number of days on a voicemail from Baltimore. Somewhere in that man there was a tally with her daughter's name on it. I'll fix it, she said. He turned the chair. 8 minutes, Taehyun said. This afternoon. And he went down the corridor, and Naomi stood at the window with a folded towel in her hand and did the arithmetic one more time, and got a different answer than she had gotten at 6 o'clock, and did not like it at all. 2 days later, at 7:40 in the morning, a truck came up the service road and stopped at the delivery entrance, and the man in the passenger seat did not get out. Naomi was there because she was always there at 7:40. The service door was where the pharmacy courier left the muscle relaxants, and she signed for those herself, because in this house, she signed for everything that went into that man's body. The driver came around and opened the back and slid out a wooden case the length of his forearm. Not a pharmacy box. Dark wood, brass corners, a shipping label with no return address, and a paper band around the whole thing, sealed. He carried it with both hands and the care of a man who had been told what it cost. Kang Sun-woo was already in the doorway. 58, gray and white uniform, white apron, silver bun pulled so tight it lifted her eyebrows, reading glasses hanging on a beaded chain, ring of keys at her hip that announced her before she arrived, always. She had run the kitchens of this family for 31 years, and she had never once, in 14 months, addressed Naomi as anything but doctor, and never once said it warmly. Sun-woo took the case, set it on the steel prep counter just inside the door, snapped the paper band with her thumbnail and lifted the lid. Naomi saw straw, then glass, then a label the color of old butter with a chateau name in raised type and, under it, a year, 1982. Sun-woo lifted the bottle out and turned it in her hands, unhurried, checking the shoulder, the neck, the seal. For Saturday, she said, not to Naomi, to the room. Saturday, the reception. Sun-woo set the bottle upright on the steel, cradled in straw like an egg. For the recovery of the master, 16 of the family. Lady Hye-rin sends the wine herself. Naomi looked at the bottle. The recovery, she said. That is the word she used. Sun-woo produced a clipboard. It appeared from somewhere near the apron the way things did with her. One motion, no search. Sign. That's a delivery for the household, Naomi said. I sign medical. You are at the door. The reading glasses went up onto her nose. The person at the door signs. 31 years, doctor. That is how the door works. She held out the pen. Naomi took it. And because she took the pen with her right hand, she had to lean in to reach the clipboard, and because she leaned in, her eyes went down past the paper and across the steel counter, and they landed, for 1 second, maybe 2, on the top of the bottle. The seal was wax, deep red, poured over the cork and the lip of the neck, stamped with the chateau's crest, intact, unbroken, beautiful, and in the center of the crest, in the flat red face of the wax, there was a hole, one hole. Round, clean, no spider web of cracks around it, no chip, no drag. The wax hadn't split. Something had gone through it and come back out, and the wax had closed most of the way behind it, the way wax does, leaving a dot the width of a needle, a pinprick. Naomi's hand kept moving. That was the thing she noticed afterward, that her hand kept moving, that the pen went across the line and made the shapes of her name while the rest of her stopped completely. 14 months of watching people put things into other people's bodies. 14 months of syringes, of gauges, of the specific little wound a fine-bore needle leaves in a rubber vial cap. She had drawn from those caps 4 times a day for a decade. She knew what a needle track through a soft seal looked like from across a room. And this one had been done well. That was the part that went through her like cold water. Whoever had put a needle through that wax had gone in at 90 degrees, dead center, through the crest, the one place on the whole seal where the stamp already had ridges and shadows to hide a mark. They had not hurried. They had not slipped. The dot sat inside the chateau's own emblem, like a period at the end of somebody's sentence. Not a cellar accident, not a customs inspection. Customs opens the case, not the cork. Doctor. She finished the N, the 2 N's, the date. Sun-woo took the clipboard back and looked at the signature and, apparently, found it acceptable because she turned away and began arranging the straw around the bottle so the label faced out. It will breathe on the table in the salon, Sun-woo said. Saturday, 2 hours before. Nobody touches it before. Nobody touches it, Naomi said. That is what I said. Who opens it? The straw stopped moving. Sun-woo looked at her over the top of the reading glasses, and for 1 second, There was something in that round face that had nothing to do with kitchens. "The cousin," she said, "Minkyu. He pours for the master, and the master drinks first." She went back to the straw. "It is the order. It has been the order since the master's father. The family watches him drink, and then the family drinks." Naomi heard her own pulse in her ears. "He drinks first," she repeated. "He drinks first." Sun Wu turned the label a half degree. "Egu, you ask a great deal of questions about a bottle, doctor." Naomi looked at the wax. From this angle, with the lamp behind it, the pinprick was gone. Just a shadow in a crest. Just nothing. Just a flaw in a bottle that had been lying in a cellar since before she was born. "Move your mouth," she thought. She had the sentence. It was 4 words long, and it was sitting right there, and every part of her training pushed it toward the front of her teeth. There's a hole in that. And behind the sentence, arriving in the same half-second, came everything else. "The Americans send us a nurse. 9 days. $214,000. 18 months. A woman with no visa of her own, no lawyer of her own, no name in this house, standing in a service entrance with a pen in her hand, about to tell the family that the wine the mother of this house had sent for a celebration had been opened with a needle. Say it to who? To Sun Wu, who had served that woman for 31 years? To Hyerin herself? Somewhere upstairs, faint through 2 floors, she heard LED sneakers. Naomi set the pen down on the steel counter, carefully, squared to the edge. "Saturday," she said. Sun Wu did not look up. "Saturday." Naomi walked 6 steps to the utility sink at the end of the prep counter, put both hands under the tap, and turned the water on. She washed her hands. Not the 10 seconds of a woman rinsing off a doorknob. She washed them the way she had been taught in a hospital in Baltimore by a woman named Vivian Prescott. Palms, backs, webs, thumbs, nail beds, wrists. And when she finished the cycle, she started it again. 60 seconds. A full minute, with a bottle sitting on the steel behind her, and a housekeeper arranging straw around it. And there was nothing on her hands, and she knew there was nothing on her hands, and she scrubbed her knuckles until the skin went hot. The tap ran. Behind her, Sun Wu closed the wooden case with a soft wooden knock and carried it out. Naomi shut the water off, dried each finger. Then she took her phone out of her coat pocket, and she stood in the service entrance of a house that had never learned her name, and she looked at a voicemail from a woman in Baltimore that had been sitting unanswered for 2 days. 9 days had become 7. She put the phone back in her pocket without touching it, and she walked upstairs to count reps. The lamp in the rehab room was still burning at 11:40 at night, and Naomi found Taehyun already inside it. He had positioned himself at the far end of the padded table, chair squared to the door, hands loose on his thighs, waiting. Not a man who had rolled in by accident on the way to somewhere else. Naomi stopped 2 steps in. "Session's at 6. Close the door." She looked at the hallway behind her, the long stretch of it, the runner, the dark. Then she closed the door and set her back against it, because a door you are leaning on is a door nobody opens quietly. He let the silence sit. He was good at silence. 14 months in this house, and she had learned that his quiet was never empty. It was a room he invited you into so he could watch what you did with the furniture. "How long have you known I can feel my left foot?" The question landed flat on the marble. Naomi's hand stayed on the doorknob behind her. She could feel the metal warming under her palm. Somewhere below, a clock did whatever clocks do at midnight in a house like this. Nothing, loudly. 11 days, she said. He nodded once, like a man confirming a delivery. "And you?" she asked. 4 months. The number went through her sideways. 4 months. She had been kneeling on that marble every morning for 4 months, with her thumb on a calf that was already answering, writing zeros in a chart, and the man on the table had been letting her. "You've been faking the plateau." "I've been faking a great many things, doctor." She came off the door then, not fast. She walked to the table, to the exact spot where she knelt at 6 every morning, and she stayed standing. "Show me." He held her eyes for a beat. Then he moved his left foot inside the shoe. A small rotation, ankle-driven, controlled. No spasm in it, no clonus, no accident. She had watched 1,000 feet lie to her. This one wasn't lying. Naomi sat down on the edge of the padded table. It was the first time she had ever put her own body on it. "Jinja," she said, quiet, to nobody. "You speak it." "I speak enough." He almost smiled. Almost is a thing his face did instead of smiling. "You didn't chart it," he said. "No." "Why?" And there it was, laid across the table like a scalpel he wanted to see her pick up. She could have given him the professional answer. Insufficient serial data, awaiting confirmation across sessions, clinical prudence. Vivian Prescott had taught her that sentence, and Naomi could deliver it in her sleep, in the tone that ends conversations with attendings. She gave him the true one. "Because the day I write it down, my contract is over." He didn't blink at that. "They hired me for a man who won't walk," she said. "Progress is my job. Progress is also my termination. Your aunt has been looking for a reason for 14 months. I'd be handing her a signed one. 18 months left on the contract. 18 months of a salary. Not 18 months of a job. Those aren't the same thing in this house, and you know it. And the child." Naomi's jaw set. "Leave her out of it." "She's in it," he said. "She was in it before either of us decided anything." The lamp hummed. Out in the corridor, a floorboard did its slow settling, the house cooling down, the way houses do when the people in them stop pretending to sleep. "Your turn," Naomi said. 4 months. Why didn't you tell anyone?" He looked at his own hands, big hands, scarred across the knuckles, resting on a body that was supposed to be finished. "Because a man in this chair is a man who has already been dealt with," he said. "The moment I stand up, I become a problem again, and problems in my family are solved with a second bullet. You think somebody in this house would?" "I don't think, doctor. I count." He tipped his head slightly. 14 months. Not one of them has asked me a question about my legs. 16 people are coming Saturday to celebrate a recovery none of them has ever asked about. Naomi's mouth opened, closed. She thought of a red wax seal with a chateau crest pressed into it, and one clean round pinprick sitting dead center in the crest, like a full stop in the middle of a sentence. She said nothing. That is a decision too. She made it in less than a second, standing in a room at midnight, and she would spend the rest of her life turning it over. "So we have the same problem," Taehyun said. "We have opposite problems. We have one lie." His voice dropped, smooth, unhurried. "You need my legs to stay dead, so you keep your contract. I need my legs to stay dead, so I keep my life. That is not opposite, doctor. That is a marriage." Naomi stood up off the table. "Don't." "Then call it what you like." She walked to the wall bar and put her hand on it. The bar she had negotiated 8 minutes on that morning. The bar he had been able to reach for 4 months without her. "What do you want?" she said. "The chart stays clean. Zeros. Plateau. You keep writing the man they paid for. And your side. You and the girl stay inside these walls. Nobody moves you to the staff wing. Nobody touches her. Nobody speaks to either of you the way my aunt spoke to you in that doorway." Naomi turned around. "You heard that. I hear everything in this house," he said. "It's the only muscle I've been allowed to use. 90 seconds, that's what it took." She checked it later against the clock in her own head, and it came out to 1.5 minutes, the length of time it takes to wash your hands properly twice. the length of time it takes to trade the last clean thing you own. I need it said plainly, she told him. You're asking me to falsify a clinical record. I'm asking you to write nothing. There's a difference. You've been living in it for 11 days. She hated that he was right. She hated more that she had thought at first. There's a word for what you're describing, she said. 2 of them, actually. One is fraud. The other is accessory. Accessory to what, doctor? She held his eyes and let the question rot on the table between them, because she had signed a delivery slip on Thursday morning, and she was not going to be the one who said the sentence out loud. To whatever this house is planning to do with a man it thinks is already dead, she said. He accepted that. He didn't argue it. Worse, he looked at her the way a man looks at someone who has just tested well. When it's over, she said, I document everything. Retroactively. Dated, signed, the whole progression. I'm not losing my license for you. When it's over, he agreed, you can put my name on a billboard. Don't tempt me. Something moved in his face. A fraction, at the corner. He extended his hand across the padded table. Naomi looked at it for 3 full seconds. Then she took it. His grip was dry and exact, and it stopped the instant she stopped. 6 a.m., she said. 6 a.m. She got to the door. Her hand was on the knob when his voice came from behind her, level as a ruler. Doctor. What? You didn't ask me who. Naomi stood very still with her back to him. Who what? She said. Who fired the bullet? The knob was cold now. No, she said. I didn't. And she went out into the corridor and let the door click, and she stood in the dark of the runner for a long moment before she walked, because her legs had opinions, and she was overruling them. Behind the door, Taehyun sat alone under the lamp. He rolled his chair 1 meter to the left, put 2 fingers on the side panel, the flat black face of it, warm from his own body, and held them there without pressing. Then he turned the lamp off himself. Naomi did not go to her room. She went down to the 2nd-floor window at the end of the east corridor and stood there with her phone in her hand and the screen dark. Vivian's voicemail was still sitting in it. 6 days now. The offer had a shape she could still see. A badge, a hospital cafeteria, a corridor where nobody's aunt decided which hallways she was allowed to use. 6 days is enough time to pack a child. She unlocked the phone. She got as far as the P in the contacts. Then she thought about a bottle standing in straw on a steel counter with a needle track in the wax, and a man in a chair who said he counted instead of thinking, and she understood, standing at a window at midnight in a house that had never once been hers, that she had stopped being a person who could leave sometime around 11:41. She locked the phone. She went to bed. She slept the way you sleep on a bench at an airport. Saturday came the way it was always going to come. By 4 in the afternoon, the salon had been transformed into a room that had never met the people who lived in it. Sunwoo's staff moved through it in a formation 31 years in the making. Chairs at angles, 16 places, 16 crystal glasses set out along the sideboard on a linen runner. The glass table cleared of everything except 1 bottle. The 1982 had been standing on that table since 2 o'clock. 2 hours to breathe, exactly as protocol required. Nobody touched it. The label faced the door so that everyone who entered saw it before they saw the man in the chair. Naomi watched from the corridor arch with Zoe's hand in hers. The child had been dressed for it. Butter yellow, the good dress, the small cardigan buttoned to the throat by a mother who had buttoned it twice. The puffs were tied fresh with the gold bows. The sneakers Naomi had lost the argument about. Zoe had held them against her chest and stated her position, and Naomi had been too tired at 7 in the morning to win a war about footwear. You sit with me, Naomi said, crouching. You stay in my lap or on that rug. That's the whole world today. Understand? Is Papai getting a party? Something like a party. Because he's better? Naomi's thumb stopped on the cardigan button. "Because they say he's better," she said. "They came in at 5. 16 COs, and they arrived the way a weather front arrives. Not all at once, but with a pressure change first. Perfume, wool. A cousin from Busan, who kissed the air beside Heyrin's cheek. 2 men Naomi had never seen who looked at her badge, and then at her face, and then decided which one they had been talking to. Hyerin held the center of the room, without appearing to occupy any part of it. Burgundy silk, the thin line of the tennis bracelet catching the chandelier whenever her wrist turned. She moved from group to group, and every group reorganized itself around her arrival and pretended it hadn't. Taehyun came in last. The room did what it always did. The half-beat of silence, the recalibration, 16 people adjusting their eyeline down 30 centimeters. He rolled to the head of the glass table and stopped there, and someone's laugh, cut off in the middle, went to die in a corner. "Sit, sit," Hyerin said brightly. "We've kept him waiting." They sat. Minkyu took the chair nearest the bottle. Navy suit, wine-colored tie, the white gold watch riding his wrist as he reached, and he reached without being asked, because that was his right, because his father had poured before him, and his father's father before that, and Naomi watched a man pick up a bottle with the confidence of tradition. He cut the foil. He drew the cork out in one clean pull, and it came free with a sound like a small word. Naomi watched the cork. She was 6 meters away, standing at the edge of the rug where Zoe had settled with a tin of wooden blocks, and she was watching a piece of stained bark in a stranger's hand, as if it were a scan. Minkyu poured. First glass, Taehyun's, set down in front of him at his right hand. Then the others, 16 crystal bowls, filling in a slow procession around the table, and the sound of it was the only sound in the room. Minkyu stood. "I'm not good at this," he began, which is what men say when they have practiced. Light laughter, the good kind, the kind families keep in a drawer. 14 months ago, he said, we thought we had lost my cousin. He let the pause work. He was good at pauses, too. It ran in the blood. We prayed. Some of us more than will admit. Another ripple. And instead of losing him, we watched him do something I don't think this family had ever seen before. We watched him refuse to be smaller. Naomi's hand found the back of a chair. Minkyu raised the glass. The chandelier went through it, and threw a red coin of light onto the white tablecloth in front of him. "To my cousin," he said, "who taught us all that a man doesn't need to stand to be looked up to." The room broke into it. That murmured, warm, appalling agreement. Glasses lifted. Someone said the name softly. An old aunt near the window put her hand over her heart. Taehyun raised his glass with them. His face gave nothing away, and his hand was steady, and the tattoo on his neck went into his collar the way it always did. "Beautiful," Hyerin said. "Minkyu, sit down before you make the aunties cry." He sat, and the room laughed, and the laugh went around the table, and touched everyone, and came back clean. Naomi counted glasses. It was the only thing her hands could do. 16 full, 1 fuller. She counted the people who were watching Taehyun's hand, and got 4. Minkyu, an uncle by the window, a young cousin with her phone face down on the linen, and Hyerin, who was watching without appearing to look at anything at all. And then Lady Seo Hyerin did something she had not done for anyone in that room in 20 years. She rose, took the bottle off the glass table herself, walked the length of it, and refilled her nephew's glass with her own hand. Silk moved. The bracelet slid down her wrist and stopped against the heel of her palm, and she did not adjust it. She poured until the bowl was full, set the bottle down, and rested 2 fingers on Taehyun's shoulder for exactly as long as a photograph would need. "Drink, my darling," she said. "You've earned it." 16 people watched a matriarch pour wine for a man in a wheelchair and thought they were watching love. 40 minutes before that toast, the kitchen had been empty. Sun Woo had sent the staff out to lay the sideboard, and the room was down to its bones: steel, tile, the long prep counter, the fluorescent tube over the sink humming its one note. The 1982 stood on the counter in a nest of straw, seal intact, waiting for its 2 hours on the glass. Under the far table, on the cool tile behind the tablecloth's hem, a 4-year-old was building a tower. Zoe had come in for a cookie and stayed for the acoustics. Kitchens are good rooms. The tile does something to sound. She had 11 blocks and a plan, and nobody in the world knew where she was, which was the entire point. The door opened. 2 sets of shoes, 1 pair of exclusive Italian heels, 1 pair of polished Italian Oxfords, men's, mirror bright. 9 minutes, a woman's voice said. She counts them out at the door. It's enough. Under the table, Zoe stopped stacking. Grown-ups in a kitchen were not interesting. Grown-ups whispering in a kitchen were extremely interesting. She leaned. The tablecloth had a gap at the corner, and through the gap she could see the counter and 2 pairs of hands, and nothing else. Hands were enough. The woman's hands lifted the bottle out of the straw and turned it. The bracelet slid. That thin, bright rope of stones the child had been told not to touch at Christmas, and it slid down the wrist and hung there, swinging, while the fingers steadied the neck. The man's hands came in from the right. The watch on the left wrist was white and heavy, and it knocked once against the glass of the bottle, a small tick, and the woman's hand went still. Careful. It's fine. Then the man's hands did something Zoe had seen before, in a bright room with a fish tank, when a lady in a blue shirt had told her to look at the ceiling and count to 5. A thin glass tube with a silver line inside it, a needle on the end of it, so thin it was almost not there. The needle went into the red top of the bottle, straight down, in the middle, into the little picture stamped in the wax. The silver line got shorter. Zoe watched the whole thing with her chin on a block, breathing through her mouth. The needle came out. The man's thumb pressed the red top flat, twice, small circles, the way Mamai pressed a bandage down. The woman turned the bottle so the label pointed at the door. 2 hours on the table, she said. Min-kyu pours, he drinks first. And if he doesn't? He always drinks first. 31 years, my dear. His father drank first, too. The heels went to the sink. Water ran for a moment. Then the shoes crossed the tile, both pairs, and the door swung, and the fluorescent tube hummed on over an empty kitchen and a bottle standing in straw with its label facing out. Under the table, Zoe put block number 12 on top of block number 11. The tower fell over. She started again. She was 4. The lady with the bracelet had put medicine in Papai's drink, which was what you did for people who were sick, and the man with the shiny watch had helped, and neither of those facts was as urgent as the fact that block 6 kept sliding. The only witness in the CO house was on the floor, stacking wood, and nobody had thought to count her. Not the woman who ran 16 relatives with a chignon and a false smile, not the man in the navy suit, not the 31-year kitchen. Children are furniture in houses like this. That is the entire architecture of the thing. Back in the salon, 40 minutes later, the toast finished and the room settled into its warmth. 16 glasses down, 1 glass full to the brim in the hand of a man whose aunt had poured it herself. Taehyun turned the crystal a quarter turn on the tablecloth. The red coin of light moved across the linen. Naomi's fingers were white on the back of the chair. On the rug, 6 meters away, a 4-year-old in butter yellow reached for another block, looked up at the glass table, and saw the red top of the bottle lying on the tablecloth where Min-kyu had left it. She stood up. Her sneakers lit the floor. 4 years old is fast. Naomi had forgotten how fast, the way you forget a language you no longer speak, and she remembered it in the half-second it took Zoe to clear the rug. The sneakers threw green across the marble. Zoe went under an aunt's elbow, around the leg of a chair, past a cousin who reached for her out of reflex and closed his hand on air. Naomi's mouth opened around a name, and the room swallowed it. 16 people talking at once will eat a word whole. Taehyun had the crystal at his chin. He had lifted it slowly, the way a man lifts a thing he has decided about, and the chandelier had come apart inside the wine and laid a red coin of light on the tablecloth beside his wrist. Min-kyu was watching that wrist. The uncle at the window was watching that wrist. Hye-rin was watching the room watch the wrist, which was a different job entirely, and she was better at it than any of them. Zoe hit his forearm at a full run. She hit it the way children hit things they love, shoulder first, both arms open, and the glass jumped out of his hand and turned once in the air, and the wine came out of it in a single red rope that hung there for exactly as long as it takes 16 people to stop breathing. The crystal detonated on the marble. Not broke, detonated. A flat white crack that went up the walls and came back down, and then the small rain of it, pieces skating out under the table, under chairs, one piece traveling 6 meters and stopping against Naomi's shoe. Wine went across the tablecloth and off the edge in a line. Wine went up the leg of Min-kyu's navy suit in a spray of dark points. Wine went across the marble in a shape like a hand. The silence afterward had a texture. Naomi felt it on her skin. Zoe was still holding his forearm. She had her whole self wrapped around it, the yellow dress against the black wool, one gold bow crooked, and she was pulling, actually pulling, with her heels braced on the marble, as though the glass were still in his hand and she still had work to do. "No," Zoe said. "No, no, no, papai, no." 16. Seos heard the word. Min-kyu came out of his chair. It went over backward. That was the second sound in the room, and it landed differently than the crystal. Wood, on stone, blunt, and it made 3 people flinch who had not flinched at the glass. He was around the corner of the table before the chair finished falling, and he was already shouting, and what came out of him was not a man correcting a child. It was something with the lid off. "Get it off him." Nobody moved. "Get that thing off my cousin." He said it in Korean, and then he said it again in English, which told Naomi something she filed and did not have time to look at, and his hand was out and open and coming down toward the back of Zoe's yellow dress, and Naomi was already crossing the rug. She got 4 steps. Hye-rin got there first. Burgundy silk, no sound, the length of the table covered in the time it takes to decide, and her hand closed on Zoe's upper arm above the elbow. Naomi heard it. That was the thing she would keep. Across 6 meters of ruined salon, over 16 people, she heard her daughter's arm inside a grown woman's grip, the small, dull sound of a small joint being asked a question it had no answer for. Zoe let go of the forearm. Hye-rin lifted, and Zoe's sneakers left the marble, and they lit, green, green, red, kicking at nothing at all. Naomi crossed the last 2 meters and did not touch her. That was the decision. It was made in the length of a step, and it cost her more than the 14 months. She had seen enough houses to know what a mother's hands look like in a room like that, and she knew that the second she put them on Lady So Hye-rin, the story stopped being about a bottle and started being about an American who assaulted a widow in her own salon. So she stopped 1 arm's length short. She put her hands where everyone could see them. She held them open at her sides like a woman surrendering something. "Put her down," Naomi said. "Please, please," Hye-rin repeated. She turned the word over. She seemed genuinely interested in it. Zoe's feet found the floor. Hye-rin's hand stayed. 14 months, Hye-rin said, and now she was not talking to Naomi. She was talking to the 16, and her voice had gone up half a step to reach the corners, the way a woman's voice does when she has done this in this room before. 14 months my nephew has been recovering under this roof. 14 months, and on the day, we open a bottle his father bought before any of you were married, this is what runs across the floor. She shook Zoe once. Just once. Just enough. This is what happens, Hierin said, when you let strangers' children run in a family house. Somebody said, Aigu softly by the window, and it was not sympathy, it was agreement. Naomi looked at her daughter's arm. She had spent a decade learning arms. Deltoid, biceps. The tender inside where the skin is thin enough to read through, and she could see it happening in real time under the honey-brown skin, the blanch first, 4 ovals going pale as the pressure emptied them, and she knew exactly what they would be in 90 seconds. 4 marks, 4 fingers. A thumb she couldn't see on the far side, because the far side was pressed against burgundy silk. Something in Naomi's chest went very quiet and very cold and started counting. Ma'am, Naomi said, you're compressing the brachial artery. Hiren's eyebrow moved. You're standing in wine and glass with a 4-year-old in your hand, Naomi said. Her voice came out level, which surprised her, which she would think about later, at length, in a locked room. Put her down, and I'll take her out, and you can finish your evening. Your evening, Hiren said. You say that as though anything in this house belongs to you. Min Kyu was wiping his lapel with a napkin. He had wine on his cuff. He was looking at the wine on his cuff the way a man looks at a wound. That bottle, he said, was 82. He said it to the room. The room made a sound, and Naomi, standing in the wreckage with her hands open at her sides, understood that they were not going to talk about the child at all. They were going to talk about the wine. For the rest of the night, for the rest of their lives, the injury in this room was going to be a bottle, and the 4 marks coming up on her daughter's arm were going to be the price of the bottle, and every person here had already agreed to that without a word being exchanged. Taehyun had not moved. Naomi saw it in her peripheral vision, and it registered the way a stopped clock registers. He sat where he had sat, at the head of the glass table, in the chair, and his hand was still open in the air at the exact height where the crystal had been taken from it. He was looking at the wine on the marble, not at Hiren, not at Zoe, at the wine, at the shape it had made spreading out from the shatter, the way you look at a thing you have been waiting for. 14 months of this room, adjusting its eyeline down. Nobody looked at him now, either. Take the child to the staff wing, Hiren said over her shoulder, to nobody, which meant to Sunwoo, who was in the doorway, because Sunwoo was always in the doorway, and have someone bring a cloth, Aigu, the floor. That was when Zoe pulled her arm free. She did it the way a 4-year-old does it. A full-body twist, no technique, all conviction. And the silk didn't want to hold her, and the grip opened, and she came out of it, and landed with both feet flat. And then she did the thing that Naomi would replay for the rest of her life. She didn't run to her mother. She stepped back, 1 step, then another, until she had the whole room in front of her. She crossed her arms over the butter-yellow dress. She lifted her chin, and Naomi watched her daughter set her feet on a marble floor covered in broken crystal, in a house that had given her exactly 1 hallway, and take a breath the way you take a breath before you tell the truth. Zoe had never once been given a reason to be afraid of a large thing. Naomi had made sure of it. She had made sure of it in doctors' offices and in airports, and at the top of slides, on purpose, for 4 years, thinking she was raising a girl who could walk into any room. She had been. That was the problem. I saw you, Zoe said. Hiren's face did nothing. I saw you, putting the rat-killing medicine in Popeye's drink. Zoe pointed. Straight arm, index finger, the way you are taught not to point. In the kitchen, with the shiny bracelet. And him. The finger swung to the navy suit, to the napkin, to the cuff, with the ticking watch. You put the needle in the red part. I saw you. You're very mean. The salon did not gasp. That was the thing about it. Naomi had heard rooms gasp. Rooms gasp when they are surprised, and surprise is a kind of innocence, and there was no innocence available in that salon. What the room did was quieter than a gasp, and it went through Naomi's body like cold water poured down her spine from the collar. The room looked at the child. 16. COs turned their heads at slightly different speeds and looked at a 4-year-old in a yellow dress with her arms crossed, and Naomi, who had spent 14 months learning to read the faces in this house because her salary depended on it, read every one of them at once and found not a single flicker of alarm on behalf of the man at the head of the table. The old aunt, who had put her hand over her heart during the toast, looked at Zoe with her mouth slightly open, and it was not horror, it was calculation. The young cousin with the phone face down did not turn the phone over. The uncle at the window looked at Zoe, and then, and this was the part, he looked at Hye-rin, not to accuse her, to check on her, to see if she was all right. 16 people, and every one of them looked at that child the way you look at something that has been left on the floor. A cousin near the sideboard reached back without turning his head and set his glass down on the linen runner. He set it down very carefully. He set it down the way you put a thing away that you have decided not to be seen holding, and beside him a woman in gray did the same, and then a man by the door, and in 11 seconds Naomi watched 4 glasses of a 1982 Bordeaux find surfaces around that salon, gently, one after another, with nobody exchanging a single look. Nobody said, "What did she say?" Nobody said, "She's 4, she's confused, she's playing." Nobody said any of the things a room says when a room does not already know. Naomi's ears filled with a low sound, and she understood, standing in wine, that she had gotten it wrong from the first day. She had thought there was a poisoner in this family. There was no poisoner in this family. There was a family, and the family had a bottle, and the bottle had a job, and the only person in the salon who had not been told was the man they had come to celebrate, and Naomi, and a 4-year-old under a table with 11 blocks. "She's 4, Naomi said. It came out of her because her mouth was faster than the cold thing in her chest. She heard herself doing it. She heard herself doing the only arithmetic left on the table, and she hated the answer even as she said it. She's 4 years old. She watches cartoons about a rat. She doesn't know what she's saying. She saw someone open the wine. Naomi got a hand on Zoe's shoulder, finally, and Zoe's shoulder was warm and small and furious under her palm. "I'll take her upstairs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll take her right now." "Mine." Zoe looked up at her, betrayed. "I saw it." "I know," Naomi said, very low, in her daughter's ear. "Baby, I know." And that was the sentence. She felt it leave her mouth, and she felt it land, and she knew before she straightened up that it had landed on the wrong ears, because Hye-rin was not a woman who missed things. Hye-rin had been standing an arm's length away with her hand still curled in the shape of a child's arm, and she had heard a mother tell a lying child she was lying, and then she had heard the mother say, "I know." Hye-rin's chin came up an inch. "You know," Hye-rin said. Naomi's hand tightened on Zoe's shoulder. "You know," Hye-rin said again, and she was smiling now, the thin, discreet arc she wore to funerals and to breakfast, and she was not looking at Zoe anymore at all. "You signed for it, didn't you, doctor? Thursday morning, Sun-woo told me you asked a great many questions about a bottle." The floor went out from under the room, and only Naomi felt it. "I signed a delivery," Naomi said. "Yes," Hye-rin said. "You did." Min-kyu had stopped wiping his cuff. "You had 4 days," Hye-rin said. She said it gently. She said it the way you explain a thing to someone you have already finished with. 4 days and a telephone in your pocket, and a man you see at 6 in the morning every single day of your life. And here we all are. She let it sit. The old aunt looked away. That was worse than the looking. 14 months I have watched you count, Hayrin said. Count, and write your zeros, and take our money, and I have said to my nephew, I have said it to his face, in front of witnesses, this woman is a nurse. And he laughed at me. Everyone in this room heard him laugh at me. Her hand opened, offered the salon the wine on the marble, the glass, the child. Look what the nurse brought into this house. Naomi opened her mouth. The sentence was right there. It had been right there for 14 months, folded up small in the place where she kept it. Doctorate of Physical Therapy, Johns Hopkins. Board certified in neurologic rehabilitation, top 4% of the country. And I have been drawing medication out of a rubber cap 4 times a day for 10 years, ma'am, which is how I know exactly what a fine-bore needle track looks like in red wax, and I saw yours on Thursday at 7:40 in the morning. She looked at her daughter's arm. 4 marks. They had come up. Not pale anymore. 4 soft red ovals on honey-brown skin, already going purple at the edges the way they do on children. A thumbprint on the far side she still couldn't see. In 11 hours they would be plum. In 3 days they would be green. In 8 days they would be a story nobody could prove. And Naomi had exactly 1 photograph's worth of time to prove it. And no lawyer, and no visa that survived a terminated contract, and no country in this country. She closed her mouth. She did not say it. She put her hand on the back of her daughter's head, over the crooked gold bow, and she felt Zoe lean into her leg, and she understood that she had just spent the sentence. 14 months she had saved it for a moment worth it. This was the moment. It was worth it, and she couldn't afford it, because the second she said doctor in that salon, she stopped being a servant they could dismiss, and became a witness they had to solve. Naomi wanted them to dismiss her. She wanted it with everything she had. You're right, Naomi said. I'm a nurse. Somewhere behind her, Naomi heard the smallest sound in the room. 2 fingers moving on carbon fiber. She did not turn around. Come on, baby, she said. She turned Zoe by the shoulders. 2 steps toward the doorway, toward Sun Woo, toward the hall, and Naomi's mind was already 3 moves ahead and running. Get her upstairs, photograph the arm in the window light, both arms, a coin next to it for scale, timestamp, 4 frames, then the phone, then the letter P, then Baltimore, then 6 days is 4 days now, 4 days is enough, 4 days is Han. Hayrin did not raise her voice. She said 1 syllable to the doorway, and the doorway filled. He came in from the hall on the other side of Sun Woo, and Naomi had never seen him before in 14 months, and understood immediately that this was because she had never been meant to. Enormous. Charcoal, no tie, black gloves. He stopped 4 feet inside the salon and stood there, and the room got smaller by 1/3. Nobody leaves, Hayrin said. The child has made an accusation in front of the family. We'll settle it as a family. Naomi's hand was on the doorframe. 4 feet away, Han Do-yoon looked at her hand. He had a scar splitting 1 eyebrow and an earpiece coiled down into his collar, and he stood the way men stand, when standing is the entire message. He gave Naomi nothing. He gave the room nothing. He had walked into a salon full of shattered crystal and spilled wine, and a bruised child, and his eyes had gone once around it, and settled, and Naomi understood that whatever he had just counted, it had not been the glass. Take their phones, Hayrin said. Sun Woo stepped out of the doorway to let him past. 31 years in that house, and she moved aside for him without being asked, and she did not look at Zoe, and she did not look at the floor she had been told to have cleaned, and Naomi, who had watched that woman notice everything for 14 months, who had watched her notice a question about a bottle, saw her fold her hands at her apron and look at nothing whatsoever. Naomi turned around. She turned around because there was nowhere left to turn except around, and she looked down the ruined length of that salon, past the wine going tacky on the marble, past the 16 faces that had all found somewhere else to be, past Min-kyu's hand flat on the glass table, past a burgundy sleeve, and she looked at the man in the chair. 14 months, 6 a.m., 25 reps, 8 minutes. A handshake across a padded table, and one lie held between two people who had nothing else. She looked at him, and she asked him with her whole face. Seo Taehyun sat at the head of the table, with his hands still open in the air, and he looked back at her, and he said nothing at all. Then he moved one finger. It traveled maybe 4 centimeters from the arm of the chair to the side panel, and it pressed something under the carbon fiber that nobody in that salon had ever been shown. The sound came out of the walls. A metallic clack, deep, doubled, the noise a bank vault makes when it decides. It came from the salon doors behind Han Do-yoon. It came from the archway to the dining room. It came from the service corridor, from the far end of the East Hall, from somewhere under the floor. 16. Seo's flinched at once. A family that had never flinched at anything in its life. All 16 shoulders jumping on the same half-beat. Steel came down over the windows. Not shutters, plate. The chandelier light lost the sky and became the only light there was. Naomi had her hand on the doorframe. She felt the frame move, a shiver through the wood, then a weight settling into the floor. Then nothing. She looked at the door. There was no door anymore. There was a surface where a door used to be. The room breathed once and did not breathe again. An aunt by the sideboard said something soft in Korean, a question with a rising end. Nobody answered it. Taehyun put his hand back on the arm of the chair. Han Do-yoon turned around. He looked at the sealed doorway he had been guarding, and then he did the thing that rearranged the room. He walked away from it, past Hyerin, past the overturned chair, past the wine drying on the marble in the shape of a hand. He crossed the whole length of the salon and stopped behind the wheelchair, and he set himself there with his hands folded in front of him. 3 men came out of the dining archway. They had been standing there the entire evening. Naomi understood that immediately, and understood it all the way down. 3 men in dark suits who had been within 8 meters of the toast, of the shattering crystal, of the child in the air with a hand on her arm, and who had held still for every second of it because nobody had told them yet. They spread along the wall. They did not touch anyone. They simply became a wall where a wall had not been. Seo Min-kyu was still holding the napkin. Taehyuna, he said, and it came out with a laugh in it, the laugh a man uses to give the room a way out. What is this? The master of the house looked at his cousin's wrist. Not his face, his wrist. Sunwoo's voice came from the doorway that no longer opened. She had folded her hands at her apron an hour ago, and she had not moved since, and she spoke without lifting her eyes off the middle distance. The master asked me to let them in. Hyerin turned her head. What did you say? 31 years, ma'am. Sunwoo adjusted her glasses on their beaded chain. I have never once been asked to keep a kitchen empty. Not by his father, not by him. A pause with weight in it. 9 minutes, you said. I gave you 11. Naomi's hand came off the doorframe. She was doing arithmetic and hating every number in it. The staff sent out to lay the sideboard, sent by Sunwoo. The kitchen empty at exactly the hour a bottle sat alone on a steel counter. The bottle that had come to the service entrance on a Thursday morning with no return address, and a woman with 31 years of protocol in her hands who had insisted that the person at the door sign for it. She had signed a piece of paper that put her name on the night. Aigu, Sunwoo said quietly, to nobody. The wine was very good, ma'am. He chose it himself. Hyerin looked at the bottle on the glass table. It was still there. still holding wine. One glass had died on the marble, and 15 were sitting full and untouched around a room where 4 people had quietly set theirs down. He chose it, Hairin repeated. The master sent the case to your house last month, Sunwoo said. Your assistant returned it and asked for a different vintage, 82, his father's year. She smoothed her apron. You told him it would mean something to the family. Minkyu put the napkin down on the glass table. He put it down very carefully, the way a man sets down a weapon he has decided not to use. Cousin, 14 months, Taehyun said. His voice had not been used in almost an hour, and it came out low and unhurried, and it went into every corner of that room without lifting once. 14 months I have been in this chair. 16 of you visited. 16 of you sent flowers and sat with me and told me I was brave. He turned the chair a few degrees. A small movement, wrist only. Not one of you asked what my doctor said. The old aunt who had put her hand over her heart during the toast lowered her eyes to the rug. Not one, he said. 14 months, that was the number that told me. Naomi stood in a corner of a sealed room and felt the floor of her own story drop out from under her, because she had said it to him herself 3 nights ago, in the rehab room with the lamp on. 16 people are coming Saturday to celebrate a recovery nobody asked about. She had thought she was warning him. He had built it. You wanted a party, she said out loud, before she chose to. Every head turned. It was the first thing the nurse had said since she had agreed to be a nurse. Taehyun did not turn. I wanted a bottle, he said. A party is what a bottle needs. Hyerin took 1 step toward the glass table. Doyun did not move and did not need to. The step ended on its own. You let a child, she started. You put your hand on her. Nothing changed in his voice. That was the part Naomi would carry for the rest of her life. That he said it at the same volume he had said everything else, and that the room went colder by 10 degrees anyway. I sat here, he said, and I let you put your hand on a 4-year-old, because if I had moved, you would have run, and I have waited 4 months to know which one of you would come with a needle. He let the silence sit. That is what I am. You have all been very slow to notice. Then he leaned forward and put both hands on the arms of the chair. Naomi's whole body went to the ceiling, because she knew the sequence. She had counted it at 6 in the morning for 14 months, and she had felt it come back into his calf 11 days ago, and she had written nothing down, not one word, on a chart that still read plateau in her own handwriting, and she was the only person in the room who understood what was about to happen before it happened. He shifted his weight forward onto his palms. He set his left foot flat on the marble, then the right. And Seo Taehyun stood up in front of his family. He was 1.91 meters. He had spent 14 months building shoulders on a man who could only pull, and he came up out of that chair slowly, without a hand from anyone, and the chandelier put him across half the room in shadow. The koi on his neck came out of his collar as he straightened. Somebody dropped a glass. It bounced on the rug and did not break. The young cousin turned her phone face up, looked at the screen, and turned it face down again. Minkyu took a step back and hit the overturned chair with his heel. Hyerin did not step back. Naomi gave her that much, then and always. The woman stood in wine and glass in her burgundy silk, and watched a dead man come up to his full height, and her chin stayed exactly where it was, and the only thing in her that moved was her thumb, finding the tennis bracelet on her opposite wrist and turning it once around. 4 months, Taehyun said. I have been standing for 4 months, in a room on the 2nd floor, at 6 in the morning. He took 1 step. It was not smooth. It was a step. You threw me a party for a recovery none of you asked about, and I let you, and you brought a syringe into my father's kitchen, and you put it through his crest. He picked up the cork. It had been lying on the tablecloth since Minkyu pulled it in one clean motion an hour ago, And every person in that room had looked past it 40 times, and now he held it up between 2 fingers, with the red wax facing the chandelier. 11 blocks, he said. She was under the table with 11 blocks. He set the cork down on the glass, in the center, where a bottle had breathed for 2 hours. Han. Do-yoon stepped forward and put a phone into his employer's hand. Not a gun, a phone. Taehyun looked at the screen for 3 seconds and turned it around so the room could see it. Naomi was too far away to read it. She watched 16 faces read it instead, which was better information. Kitchen, he said. 2 cameras. My father put them in 1994 because he did not trust his brother. A beat. You are all so certain that a man in a chair cannot see. The uncle by the window sat down. There was no chair. He sat down on the sideboard, among the crystal, and a glass went over, and rolled, and the room let it. Take my phone, Hyrin said suddenly. Her voice came up half a step, the same half step she had used to tell 16 people what happens when you let strangers' children run in a family house. Take it. Take all of them. That is what I said, and I was right to say it. Ma'am, Do-yoon said. He had a voice. It was the first time Naomi had heard it, and it was almost gentle. You said Han. He looked at her with the scar splitting his eyebrow. I have never worked for you. Hye-rin stopped. Naomi watched the exact second it landed. The second the woman understood that she had summoned a man out of the dark with 1 syllable, and he had come, and that he had come the way a door comes open when you are already standing on the trapdoor. Then Taehyun reached out and put his hand on the bottle. The room made a sound, a single collective intake, 16 sets of lungs. He pushed it. He pushed it across the glass table with 2 fingers, slow, and it traveled the whole length and it did not fall, and it came to rest in front of Seo Min-kyu, label facing out, the way she had turned it in the kitchen so it would face the door. Min-kyu looked at it. Death would be too easy a gift, Taehyun said. He stood there with his weight on 2 legs that had been dead in every chart in the country for 14 months, and he watched his cousin's face, and his own gave nothing at all. You have 10 seconds. Every share, every property, every account you hold in my father's name, and in your mother's name, and in the name of that company in Busan you think I don't know about, transferred to me, tonight, from that phone, in this room. The pause. Then you walk out of this house in the clothes you are wearing, and you leave this country and you do not come back. He looked at the bottle. Or you drink that, to the last drop. Min-kyu laughed. It was a terrible sound, a man's whole life coming apart through his mouth. You can't. Taehyuna, you cannot transfer. There are boards, there are lawyers, there are... Han has the documents. Do-yoon set a folder on the glass table. It had been under his arm since the first second he entered the room, and Naomi understood that too. Now, he had not scanned the wreckage when he arrived. He had counted heads. 10, Taehyun said. Cousin, 9. That bottle was 82. Min-kyu said it again. The same sentence he had said to the room with wine on his trouser leg, and this time, nobody found it funny, and he heard himself say it, and his face came apart in the middle. 8. Hye-rin's hand went out and closed on her son's forearm. 4 fingers, above the elbow. Sign it, she said. She said it in Korean, and then, because half the young ones in that room had grown up in Los Angeles, she said it again in English, and her voice had nothing left in it at all. Sign it, Min-kyu. He signed it. He sat down in a chair somebody pushed under him, and he opened the folder, and his thumb shook so badly the phone read it wrong twice. Around the salon, one by one, other phones came out. An uncle. The aunt with her hand on her heart. A cousin in the corner who had not said one word all evening, and who was, Naomi would learn much later, the one who had recommended the compound. 16 people began transferring an empire in complete silence, and the only sound in the room was thumbs on glass. Naomi did not watch the end of it. She had spent the whole minute doing what she always did, which was counting, and she had counted a service door. Not the salon doors, not the archway. The little inset panel in the paneling on the west wall that Sunwoo's staff came through with the platters, the one that was cut into the wall so cleanly that Naomi had walked past it for 14 months and never once seen it as a door, until she watched a woman with a ring of keys stand beside it. The plate had come down over everything in this house. The plate had not come down over that. She looked at Sunwoo. Sunwoo looked back at her for the first time all evening, and then she looked at the panel, and then she looked at the floor. 31 years. The person at the door signs. Naomi went for it. She was across the rug in 4 steps and through the panel and into a corridor that smelled of steel and old soap, and behind her she heard the last mechanism in the house finish what it had been doing, a soft, heavy chunk in the wall, the sound of the salon becoming a box with 16 seos inside it. The corridor ran 40 feet and turned. "Zoe," she said. Then she said it louder than she had said anything in 14 months in that house. Louder than she had let herself be in a country where she had no lawyer and no visa and 4 days left on a job in Baltimore. "Zoe." Light came up the corridor in colored flashes. Red, blue, green, red, bouncing off a steel wall at ankle height, coming around the corner before the child did. Zoe Bennett came around that corner at a dead run in a butter-yellow dress, with 1 gold bow crooked and 4 marks going purple on her arm, and she hit her mother's legs the way she had hit a man's forearm 11 minutes earlier, shoulder first, both arms open. Naomi picked her up. She got her hand on the back of the small head and pressed it into her own neck, and she started walking backward down the corridor. Backward, because she was not going to turn her spine on that house, and she got 4 steps before Zoe set it into her collarbone. "Mine, I told the truth." Naomi stopped. She stood in a steel corridor in a sealed house with a 4-year-old's whole weight on her arm and the marks of another woman's fingers under her palm. "I know you did, baby," she said. "I know you did." Behind her, at the end of the corridor, a shadow moved against the light. Han Do-yoon filled the doorway with his gloves folded in front of him and his earpiece coiled at his collar, and he did not come any closer, and he did not have to. "Doctor," he said, "the master says you're to wait in the East Suite." Naomi held her daughter and looked at the man and heard, through 40 feet of steel, from a room she could not see into, a sound she would try for years to describe and never manage. 16 people crying without making any noise at all. The East Suite had a bed, a window with plate over it, and a bathroom with good light. Naomi used the light. She sat Zoe on the counter and took 4 photographs of the arm, both sides, with a Korean coin from the dish by the sink laid against the skin for scale, and the timestamp burning in the corner of every frame. The marks had gone plumb an hour early. She photographed the other arm too, clean, for comparison, because a comparison arm is what turns a photograph into evidence. Then she wrote. She wrote on hotel stationery she found in a drawer, in ink, dated, and she signed it at the bottom with the credentials she had swallowed twice in one evening and had never once said out loud in that house. Doctorate of Physical Therapy, Johns Hopkins, board-certified neurologic specialist, 11 days of returned sensation in the left gastrocnemius, undocumented, and the reason why. She did not soften a line of it. Zoe fell asleep, sitting up at 9:40. At 11, Naomi tried the door. It opened. That was the part that undid her. That it opened, that it had been open the whole time, and that Seo Tae-hyun was standing on the other side of it. Standing. He had his hand on the frame, not for balance, and the chair was somewhere behind him in the hall like a coat he had taken off. "It's done," he said. "I want to leave." "I know." Naomi had her daughter asleep against her shoulder and a folded paper in her coat pocket, and a voicemail from Vivian Prescott sitting 4 days from dead in a phone that nobody, in the end, had ever bothered to take from her. "Baltimore," she said. "Attending track, neuro rehab. She needs an answer in 4 days." Her voice stayed level, and it cost her everything she had. "You're going to move out of that doorway, and I'm going to walk to the gate, and by Tuesday, my daughter is going to be in a preschool in Roland Park with a fish tank in the lobby, and nobody there is going to know what she saw." He listened to all of it. He was very good at that. It was, he had told her once, the only muscle he had been allowed to use. "She named a cartel," he said. Naomi's hand tightened on the small back. "In front of 16 witnesses," he said. She described a bracelet and a watch and a needle and a crest, and she was right, and 11 of those 16 just signed away everything they own to keep me from opening my mouth about it. A pause. 4 of them are on a plane tonight. 2 of them are not people I can bankrupt. Then I'll say her name in Baltimore, he said, and see how long the fish tank lasts. The corridor was very quiet. "There is one world," Taehyun said, "where she is a witness. In that world, somebody solves her. There is one world where she is a nurse's daughter with no standing and no visa and a photograph on her phone." He looked at Zoe's face on her shoulder. "And there is one world where she is my daughter, where the men who take out the garbage in this family know that her mother is my wife, and that touching either of them costs everything my cousin just lost. She calls you Papai because of a cartoon." 2 months, he said. I counted. Naomi looked at the koi coming out of his collar, and at the hand on the frame, and at the man she had built, rep by rep, at 6 in the morning, on a marble floor she had asked to have matted in her first week, and never got. "You knew," she said. "Thursday night, you sat in that room and asked me how long I'd known about your foot, and you already knew about the wax. Yes, you knew she was in that kitchen." Something crossed his face and was gone. "No," he said, "that one I did not have. You had cameras. I watched it at 8 this morning." His hand came off the frame. 16 hours after it was already too late to unmake her a witness. "And then I sat at that table and I let it happen, because if I had stood up at 4 o'clock they would have run, and I would have spent the rest of my life with my back to a door." Naomi Bennett looked at the man who had given her everything she had asked for, exactly as she had asked for it. "You didn't save her," she said. "You spent her." Seo Taehyun took that the way he took everything, without moving. "I let them mock me for 14 months, doctor," he said. "I can let you hate me for the rest of my life." He stepped back from the doorway. Behind him the hall ran the length of a house where every door in the world was open now, and where nobody had ever given either of them a hallway, and where the wine was already off the marble. Naomi did not walk down it. She stood in the light with her daughter breathing on her neck, and she understood that he had not blocked the door because he never needed to. The house was not the cage. The child was. Naomi shifted Zoe's weight to her left hip and stepped into the hall. She walked, past him, past the abandoned chair with its wheels still warm from 14 months of his hands. Her shoes made no sound on the runner, and that was the worst part, because a house that swallows footsteps is a house that has been designed to. He let her go 11 steps before he spoke. "East stair is faster." She stopped. Not because of the words, because of the flatness in them. A man giving directions in his own home to a woman he had already decided was staying. "I'm going to my room. I know where you're going, doctor." She turned. He had not followed. He stood where she left him, one hand on the doorframe, and she understood he was using it. 4 months of standing at 6 in the morning on a padded table with a rail is not 4 months of standing in a hallway at 11 at night with nothing to hold. His knuckles were pale. Something in her chest tried to move toward that, and she killed it before it arrived. "Your leg's going to seize by 2 a.m., she said. "Left calf. You've been vertical since 5:30. "Yes." "Sit down." "No." She adjusted Zoe again. The child's breath was warm and even against her collarbone, and the crooked gold bow scratched her jaw with every step. "Then when it goes, don't send anyone for me." "I won't." "Good. I'll come myself," he said, "on one leg if I have to, and you'll open the door because your daughter will be asleep behind it and you won't want me knocking twice." Naomi walked. She got to the east stair. She got to the second landing. She got as far as the rehab room door before her hand stopped on the handle, and she stood there in the dark with her child on her shoulder, breathing. Inside, the room was exactly as she had left it at 6 that morning. Padded table. Wall bar. Marble she had asked to have matted over in her first week, 14 months ago, and never got. The lamp was off. The chart binder sat on the shelf where it had always sat, and inside it, in her handwriting, 11 days of zeros. She went in. She laid Zoe on the padded table, the same table where a man had rotated a foot inside a shoe and changed the arithmetic of her whole life, and she stood over her daughter and looked at the arm in the light coming off the hall. Plum, 4 ovals and a thumb, an hour early, which meant the compression had been harder than she'd read in the moment, which meant Hyarin had gripped a 4-year-old with the strength of a woman holding a suitcase. Naomi took the folded stationery out of her coat pocket and read her own signature. Naomi Bennett, DPT. Johns Hopkins. Board-certified neurologic specialist. 14 months. She had let a woman in burgundy silk call her a nurse in a doorway and had swallowed it whole rather than lose the contract. She had watched that same woman call her a nurse in front of 16 people and had agreed out loud. And now the words sat in blue ink on hotel paper in a room where nobody was going to read them. She folded it back along the same crease. "Mine." Zoe's eyes were open. They had that flat brightness children get in the middle of the night, awake but not landed yet. "Sleep, baby. Is Papai still mad?" Naomi sat down on the edge of the table. She had done it once before in her life, in this room, at 11:40 on a Thursday, and it had cost her everything. Papai wasn't mad. He looked mad. He looked at everybody else, Zoe, not at you. Zoe considered this with the seriousness of a person who has been alive 4 years and has never once been told a comfortable lie by her mother. Then she said, "The bracelet lady hurt my arm. I know." "You didn't do anything." There it was. Naomi had been braced for it since the salon, since she had crouched with her mouth at her daughter's ear and told 16 Seos that the child watched cartoons about a rat. She had assumed it would arrive in a year, in 10 years, in some fluorescent kitchen in Baltimore when Zoe was 17 and knew the word for what her mother had done. It arrived in a rehab room at 11:15, in a voice with no accusation in it at all. That was what took the floor out. Zoe wasn't accusing her. Zoe was just filing it. "I took pictures of your arm," Naomi said. 4 of them, with a coin, so anybody who ever looks at them knows how big the marks were. "Why?" "So it's real." "It is real," Zoe said, and touched it, and winced. "It's on me." Naomi put her hand over her mouth for a second and took it away. "You told the truth in there," she said, "in front of all of them. Nobody in that room did that except you. You said I didn't. I said it to them. Not to you." Zoe frowned. She was working on it. The machinery behind those eyes turning over a concept most adults spend their entire lives failing to metabolize, that her mother had said a false thing on purpose, in front of people, about her. That's lying, Zoe said. Yes. You said lying is. I know what I said. Zoe lay back down. She pulled her knees up, and then, with that terrible 4-year-old economy, she delivered the sentence that Naomi would carry to the end of her life. It's okay. You were scared. Naomi turned the lamp on so her daughter wouldn't see her face, which was the only thing that room's light had ever been good for. I wasn't scared, she said to the wall bar. You were. Zoe yawned into her own shoulder. Your hand was shaking on the chair. I saw it from the rug. 6 meters. Through a forest of adult legs, past an overturned chair, across a floor of wine and glass, a 4-year-old had been watching her mother's hand. How long have you been watching my hands? Always, Zoe said, like it was a stupid question. You do them when you're worried. Naomi looked down at them, steady now. 10 years of drawing from vial caps 4 times a day had given her hands that did not shake for anything a body could do, and they had shaken on a chair back while a woman in burgundy silk lifted her daughter off a marble floor by the arm. Do Papa's hands shake? No, Zoe said. He holds the thing, then he stops. She rolled over. Mamain, can we take my sneakers off now? Naomi took them off. The LEDs flickered once as the soles left the child's heels, throwing red and blue across the padded table, and then they went dark in her hands, and stayed dark. She set them under the table, side by side, toes out, the way you leave shoes for someone who is going to need them in the morning. At 11:40, she went to the east corridor window with her phone. The steel plate had lifted from this one. Below, the drive was empty except for 2 black cars nose out, engines running, 4 men standing at a distance from each other in the cold with their hands folded, waiting for the family to be finished signing. She opened her contacts. She got to P. Prescott, Vivian. 4 days. Attending track, neuro rehab, a hospital where she had done her clinicals, a woman who had written her recommendation letter in one sitting and told her not to take the money in Korea because money like that is never only money. Naomi's thumb hovered. She thought about the sentence she would have to say. Not the first one. The first one was easy. Hey, Viv, sorry, it's been a week. The second one. The one where Vivian said so, when can you fly? And Naomi had to answer. Because there was no version of that answer that didn't end with a 4-year-old naming a cartel in a room with 16 witnesses, 4 of whom were already on a plane, and 2 of whom were people Taehyun could not bankrupt. She thought about a preschool in Roland Park with a fish tank. She thought about how long a fish tank lasts. She pressed call. It rang twice. Her heart went somewhere behind her back teeth, and on the 3rd ring she hung up, and the hanging up was not fear. She knew the difference. She had spent 14 months studying the difference. The hanging up was arithmetic. She stood at the window and understood that she had just made a decision, and that no one had made her, and that this was going to be the thing she could never explain to anyone. Not to Vivian, not to a licensing board, not to Zoe at 17. Nobody held a gun. Nobody blocked a door. He had stepped back from the doorway and the hall had been open the whole time. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Vivian Prescott, missed call returned. Naomi looked at it until it stopped. Then she opened her photographs, and she looked at 4 frames of her daughter's arm with a Korean coin beside it for scale. And she did what she had been trained to do since she was 22 years old, which was the only thing she had left. She backed them up, twice, to 2 accounts. One Vivian had the password to. Then she typed a message and did not send it, and put the phone in her coat, and that draft sat in that phone for the next 6 years. Downstairs, the salon opened at 12:20. She heard it from the 2nd floor, the mechanism running backward, the doubled clack releasing in sequence, doors, archway, corridor, hall, and then something under the floor. 16 people walked out of a room, in which they had transferred an empire from their thumbs. Naomi went to the top of the east stair and watched them leave. They did not talk, not one of them. An uncle came through the hall, carrying his own coat over his arm, like a man leaving a funeral he had catered. The young cousin walked with her phone face down against her thigh. The old aunt, who had put her hand over her heart during the toast, came through last and stopped in the middle of the hall and stood there, and nobody helped her, and after a moment, she started walking again. Min-Kyu came out in his shirt. No jacket, no watch. The white gold Swiss was gone from his wrist, and there was a pale band where 14 years of it had been. Navy trousers with the wine stain gone brown down the left leg. He walked to the front door in the clothes he was wearing, and Han Do-yoon walked 3 steps behind him in black gloves, and neither of them said anything, and the door opened for him, and the cold came in, and then it was shut. Hyerin came last. She had fixed her hair. That was the thing Naomi noticed from 30 feet up in the dark. Somewhere in the last hour, in a sealed room, a 56-year-old woman had put her chignon back into perfect alignment with her fingers, because there were still people who would see her walk out. She stopped at the base of the stair. She looked up. She found Naomi in the dark on the second landing, found her instantly, the way she had found her in the rehab doorway at 6 in the morning, 14 months of days in a row. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. The chandelier had been shut off. The only light in the hall came from the drive. "He'll do it to you too," Hyerin said. Naomi did not answer. "You think you're the doctor in this house?" Her voice had not risen. It never had. "You're the reason. That's a different job, and it's worse, and you'll have it until you die." Naomi came down 4 steps, not to be closer, to be seen. "Doctor of Physical Therapy," she said. "Johns Hopkins, board-certified neurologic specialist, top 4% in the country." Heyrin's head tilted a half-inch. "I've been standing in your doorway for 14 months, Naomi said, letting you call me a nurse, because I had $214,000 of debt, and a child, and no lawyer. That was a trade. I made it with my eyes open, and I'd have kept making it, and you never had to know." She came down 2 more, and then you put your hand on her arm. Heyrin's mouth did the thing it had done in the doorway. The arch. The discreet false smile she had been wearing since before Naomi was born. "For a bruise," she said. "You gave all this away for a bruise." 4 fingers and a thumb, Naomi said. "I have photographs, time-stamped, with a coin in the frame." "Photographs of what? Of an employer disciplining a child running in a salon? Of the last thing you ever did to anyone?" That landed. Naomi watched it land. Watched a woman recalculate a bracelet, a syringe, a crest in red wax, 16 witnesses, 2 cameras her husband's brother-in-law had installed in 1994 because he didn't trust his own blood, and a folder on a glass table. Hyerin turned the tennis bracelet once with her thumb. "Aigu," she said, soft, and there was almost something human in it. "You poor thing. You still think this ends." Naomi came down the last steps and stood on the hall floor with her. Up close, the woman was smaller than 14 months of doorways had made her. Same height, smaller. "Your son signed from a phone that couldn't read his thumb," Naomi said. "It took 3 tries. You know why? Because he was frightened. Because his hand was wet. She let that sit. You told him to sign. In Korean, then in English. You were fast about it. You've had that sentence ready for years, ma'am. You just always thought you'd be saying it to somebody else's son." Hyerin's thumb went to the bracelet again and stopped halfway. "You'll want to be careful," she said, "how much you enjoy this." "I'm not enjoying it." "No," Hyerin agreed, looking at her. "You're not. That's the part I'd worry about, if I were you. The ones who enjoy it can put it down." She walked out. The door took a long time to close behind her, and then it closed, and the house was quiet in the specific way of a house that has just been emptied of everyone who ever mocked the man sitting in it. Naomi found him in the salon at 1 in the morning. He was sitting, not in the chair. The chair was still in the upstairs hall where he'd left it. He was in a dining seat at the head of the glass table, with his left leg straight out in front of him, and both hands flat on the glass, and she knew from the doorway exactly what his calf was doing. The room had not been touched. 16 chairs pushed back at 16 angles. Crystal on the sideboard, wine dried black on the marble in the shape of a hand, glass swept into a small pile against the baseboard by someone who had started the job and been told to stop. In the center of the glass table, the cork, red wax up, the pinprick dead center in the crest, and beside it the bottle, still holding most of a 1982 that his father had bought before any of them were married. Naomi crossed the salon and stood at his shoulder and did not ask. She crouched. She put both hands on his calf and found the knot with her thumbs on the first pass, and he made a sound through his teeth that 14 months of 6 a.m. had never once gotten out of him. "Breathe out," she said. He breathed out. She worked. Neither of them spoke for 2 full minutes, and it was the least dishonest either of them had been all day. "You called her," he said finally. Naomi's thumbs kept moving. "You had my phone." "No, I had my house." "2 rings," she said. "I hung up on the 3rd. Why?" She sat back on her heels and looked up at him, at the koi coming out of his collar, at a man who had let 16 people toast a recovery he'd been hiding for 4 months so that 2 of them would come to a kitchen with a needle. "Because you were right," she said, "and I am going to hate you for being right for a very long time. And I want you to understand that I chose it anyway, not you, me." At 11:40, at that window, with the phone in my hand and the door open behind me. He looked at her for a while. "Yes," he said, "that's all you have to say. You wanted it to be my fault," he said. "It would be easier. I've been easier for people my whole life. I stopped this afternoon." Naomi stood up. She picked up the cork off the glass table and turned it in the chandelierless dark, and the pinprick was just a pinprick, a hole 1/10 of a millimeter across, expertly placed, 90 degrees, hidden in the ridges of a crest. She put it in her coat pocket, next to the folded stationery with her credentials on it. "What are you doing?" he said. Not a question. "Keeping it." "Why?" Naomi buttoned the coat. "Because one day my daughter is going to be 17, she said, "and she's going to ask me why I told a room full of people that she was lying, and I'm not going to have an answer, so I'm going to put this in her hand instead." "That's not yours," he said. "It is now." She patted the pocket flat, twice, in small circles. "You had a folder. I have a cork." He watched her hand do it, and something moved behind his face and was gone. She walked to the doorway. Then she stopped, because there was one more thing, and she'd been carrying it since Thursday morning at a steel prep counter with a pen in her hand. 6 a.m., she said. "You're going to be on that table, and I'm going to write down every single thing you can do. Dated, signed. Starting tomorrow, the chart tells the truth." He turned his head. "They already know I walk." "They do," Naomi said. "I don't care what they know. I care what's written." She left him in a room full of overturned chairs. And upstairs, in the dark, her daughter was awake again, sitting up on the padded table, with her knees hugged to her chest, and her LED sneakers still on her feet. And she looked at her mother in the doorway, and said, in a small voice that had been rehearsing for an hour, "Mamain, are we going home?" Naomi stood very still. Behind her, 3 floors down, somewhere under the marble, one last mechanism finished sealing. "Home," Naomi said. She crossed the marble and sat down on the edge of the padded table, hip to hip with her daughter, because the answer was going to take longer than the doorway allowed. Zoe waited. 4 years old and already better at waiting than most of the adults in that house. "Say it like a question again," Naomi said. "Are we going home?" "Which home?" Zoe thought about it. She pulled one knee up under her chin, and the LED in her heel flashed against the table cushion. A small blue pulse in a room lit by one lamp. "The one with my bed," she said, "and the fish." The fish were in a preschool in Roland Park that Zoe had visited exactly once, in a photograph, on her mother's phone, in a hallway of this house, 6 weeks ago. She had built the whole place out of one picture. Children do that. They take a rectangle and furnish it. "There's no fish yet, baby." "You showed me." "I did." "Then it's real." Zoe said it the way you close an argument. She had inherited that from somewhere, and Naomi had a fair idea where. "I showed you a picture of somewhere I wanted to take you." Naomi kept her voice even. 14 months of 6 a.m. had taught her exactly how much weight a sentence could carry before a body flinched. "That's different from a place we live." Zoe's mouth went flat. "So we're staying here. For now." "How long is for now?" "I don't know." That was the first entirely true sentence Naomi had said out loud in that house since Thursday morning, and it cost her more than the credentials had. Zoe absorbed it the way she absorbed everything, by moving on to the practical. "Does Papai stay too?" Naomi looked at the wall bar, at the binder on the shelf with 11 days of zeros in it, spine out, her handwriting on the label. "This is his house," she said. "That's not what I asked." Aigu. 4. "Yes," Naomi said. "He stays too." "Okay." Zoe pulled the other knee up. "Then my bed comes here." "Your bed is in the staff wing." "Then it comes upstairs." She said it like a logistics problem that adults were being slow about. "And the fish come after." Naomi opened her mouth to correct the second half and closed it. Somewhere in the last 8 hours she had lost the standing to tell her daughter which of 2 rooms was the real one, and Zoe, who had been paying more attention than anyone in the house had ever paid her, had already noticed. "The fish come after," Naomi said. Zoe nodded once, satisfied, and lay back down on the padded table like it was a bed, like a room with no rug and a wall bar, and a marble floor was somewhere a person sleeps, because her mother was sitting on the edge of it. She was asleep in 90 seconds. Naomi timed it without meaning to. 90 seconds was the length of the deal she had made on this exact table 3 nights ago, and her body had learned the interval and now measured things with it. At 2:10 in the morning, the calf locked. She heard it before she saw it. One hard breath from the corridor, cut off. Naomi was in the doorway in 4 steps. He had come up the east stair after all, and made it as far as the hallway wall, and the wall was now doing most of the work. His right hand was flat on the paneling at shoulder height. His left leg was straight out in front of him at an angle a leg is not supposed to hold, the whole gastrocnemius, drawn up into a fist under the trouser fabric. He looked at her. 2 o'clock, he said. "You were 10 minutes off. Don't talk. Down." Slowly. She got her shoulder under his arm, and for the first time in 14 months she took the actual weight of him, 90-odd kilos of a man who had spent those months being lifted by machines and belts and nobody's hands. They went down the wall together. He landed harder than she wanted. His head went back against the paneling and stayed there. She had the shoe off in seconds, and her thumbs into the belly of the muscle. It was rock. She worked it the way you work a cramp you have no drugs for. Slow pressure, hold, release, dorsiflex the foot against her forearm, hold. His breath went short and stayed short. Breathe out on the stretch. He breathed out on the stretch. "You stood for 8 hours, she said. 9. You have been sitting for 14 months. You are not a man who stands for 9 hours. You're a man who stands for 40 minutes and then lies down and lets me fix what standing does. That wasn't available tonight. She pressed. The knot moved under her thumbs, gave a millimeter, took it back. It's available now. Down the corridor, the rehab room lamp made a long yellow rectangle on the marble. Neither of them looked at it. The door was open and the child was inside it, and both of them were arranging themselves, without discussing it, so that nothing in this hallway would make a sound. The calf let go at 2:31. He felt it go. His whole spine came off the wall an inch and settled back, and the breath he let out was the first ordinary one he'd taken since she got there. Naomi kept her hands on it anyway, because a muscle that lets go once will do it again in 20 minutes if you walk away and believe it. It'll come back, she said. Tonight, tomorrow night, 4 nights from now, every time you do something stupid with it. That's not injury. That's the tissue relearning what it's for and complaining the whole way. How long does it complain? Months? How many? You want a number so you can plan around it. I want a number so I can plan around it. 6, she said, give or take, depending on whether you keep doing this. Doing what? Spending it. She moved her thumbs an inch up the belly of the muscle and found the second knot, smaller, hiding behind the first. You spent 4 months of it in one evening. You wanted to be vertical in front of them more than you wanted the leg. That's a choice. It has a bill. It was worth the bill. I'm not arguing. I'm telling you what it costs, so you stop being surprised at 2 in the morning. He turned his head. In the corridor half-light, the koi went down under his collar, and she had stopped seeing it a year ago, the way you stop seeing a scar on a person you touch every morning. 6 months, he said, is a long contract. I have 18. You have nothing. He said it without any weight at all, which was what made it land. Your contract was with a man who does not exist anymore. The man who signed it couldn't stand up. Every clause in it was written for him. Her thumbs stopped. So write a new one, she said. Tomorrow. No. She sat back on her heels. Now. Because at 6 o'clock this morning, I'm going to walk into that room and open that binder and write down that on the 14th of the month at 6 a.m., the patient demonstrated independent transition from sit to stand with bilateral upper extremity support and ambulated without assistive device. And the second I write that sentence, one of 2 things is true. Either I'm your therapist and that's a clinical note, or I'm a woman in your house writing down evidence. What's the difference? About $200,000 and a license, Naomi said. And which one of those I am when your relatives' lawyers come asking who knew what and when? He was quiet. Somewhere 3 floors below, the house made a sound. The heating, or a man in a dark suit crossing a hall, or nothing. Say the terms, he said. I'm the treating clinician. In writing, on paper with a date on it. I chart everything from tonight forward, and I chart the 11 days backward with the reason stated. And the reason stated is coercion. And the person coerced is me. And the person who benefited is you. She waited. You sign that. That's a confession. That's a chart. Doctor. Something moved at the corner of his mouth that on another man would have been a smile. You watched me take 11 signatures off 11 people tonight, and your one demand is that I give you one. You had a folder, she said. I have a cork and a chart. He looked down the corridor at the yellow rectangle and the child. Zoe isn't a term. She is every term. He said it flat. She's the only reason any of this has a shape. Say her name in a deposition and everything you just described becomes the day you handed a 4-year-old to 16 people who already know her face. Then don't make me depose. I'm not planning to. He shifted the leg, tested it, let it be. You wanted in writing that you were forced. Fine. It's true. I'll sign it true. But you understand what you're building. You're building a document that proves I own you. You already own me. You did it at 11:40 on Thursday, and neither of us needed a pen. She held his eyes. This isn't about ownership. Ownership I can survive. Ownership has an address and a name, and a man standing in a hallway. What I can't survive is being nobody. Being the nurse. 14 months of a woman in the doorway deciding what I was, and me letting her, because letting her was cheaper. And now? I'm building a document that proves I was here. Naomi's voice didn't rise. That was the thing Hiren had never once understood about her. In 14 months of doorways, everybody in this house tonight is going to spend the rest of their lives saying it didn't happen. Your family, your lawyers, you. In a year you'll have a version. In 5 years it'll be a story you tell at a table. I'm not going to be a woman without paper in a room full of people with better memories than mine. He watched her. My father, he said, put 2 cameras in a kitchen because he didn't trust his brother. 31 years later, they were the only true thing in the house. Then you know why I wanted in ink. Yes. He put his hand out. 6 a.m. She looked at the hand. 3 nights ago she had taken it across a padded table to promise she would write nothing. She took it now, on a corridor floor, at 2:40 in the morning, to promise the opposite, and neither of them said the word that made it symmetrical, because they had both noticed. Get up, she said, slow, left foot loads last. He got up slow, left foot loads last. He made it to his own door on the wall, and the leg held. At 5:50, Naomi was awake, because she had never really gone under. Zoe was flat on the padded table, with one arm flung off the edge, and the sneakers on, and one gold bow crooked, and the plum marks facing the ceiling. Naomi took the binder off the shelf. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall bar, the way she had sat every morning for 14 months, while a man she was not allowed to help refused to be helped, and she opened it to the last page with writing on it. 11 days of zeros. Her own hand, her own pen, her own careful clinical nothing. Plateau maintained. No change in tone or sensation. Patient reports no change. 11 times. Each one a small, perfect lie in the handwriting of a woman in the top 4% of her profession. She turned to a clean page. She did not start with today. She started with the 4th of the month, 11 days back, and she wrote the truth of that morning. Warmth in the left gastrocnemius, palpable, sustained, patient confirmed. And then, in the notes field, in the same steady hand, she wrote, finding was not entered at the time, documenting retroactively. And then she wrote why. Employer's stated intent to terminate contract on demonstration of progress. Clinician's dependent minor child resident on premises. Clinician's visa status, contingent on employment. She wrote the number 214,000 into a medical chart, because it belonged there, because it was the mechanism, because 100 years of women had lost their names by leaving the mechanism out. 11 entries. She dated each one. She signed each one. Naomi Bennett, PT, DPT. Board-certified neurologic clinical specialist. The pen moved differently after the first signature. 14 months of a name she had let a woman in burgundy silk take out of her mouth in a doorway, and it turned out the name had been waiting the entire time, fully formed, the way a muscle waits. At 6 o'clock the door opened. He came in on his own legs and stood in the middle of the marble floor she had asked for rubber matting on in her first week, and had never received. Sit, she said, without looking up. That's my chair, It's the table my daughter is asleep on. Sit on the floor. Seo Tae-hyun sat on the floor of his own house. She finished the last line, capped the pen, closed the binder, and set it on the marble between them with the pen squared to the edge. Read it, she said. He read it. It took him 4 minutes. She watched his eyes stop twice, once at the number, once at the word. Coercion, which she had spelled out in full rather than softening it into anything a lawyer would enjoy. You wrote the amount of your debt, he said. Yes. Into a medical record. It's the mechanism. A chart with the mechanism left out is a story. She sat with her wrists on her knees. Every woman who ever kept quiet in a rich house got asked the same question afterward. Why didn't you say something? And every one of them had the answer in her pocket and left it out of the file because it was embarrassing. $214,000 is not embarrassing, it's evidence. He read the line again. Nobody in my family has ever written down the reason. I know, Naomi said. That's why it took them 31 years and a 4-year-old. He turned to the last page and put out his hand for the pen. Wait. Naomi picked up her phone, opened the camera, and photographed the open page. 2 frames, one flat, one angled to catch the ink still wet at the loop of the N. She backed them up to both accounts before his hand had moved. Then she gave him the pen. He signed. He wrote the date himself, in numerals, and under his name he added 3 words she had not asked for and did not expect, in English, in a hand that had spent 14 months signing nothing. Statement is accurate. That's more than I asked for, she said. You asked for a chart. He set the pen down and squared it to the edge, the way she did, which meant he had been watching her do it every morning for over a year. That's a chart with a witness. She looked at the page for a long moment. Then she pulled the binder back across the marble, and it made a small, dry sound in a room with nothing soft in it. Now stand up, Naomi said, and walk to the bar. It's 10 minutes. It was always 8. It was 8 when I was a nurse. He looked at her from the floor. You negotiated me down to 8 for 14 months. I negotiated you down to 8 because 8 was what a woman with no standing could get out of a man who could fire her before lunch. She stood and put the binder back on the shelf, spine out, where it had lived for 14 months telling a lie in her handwriting. 10. And rubber matting in this room by Wednesday, because you're going to fall in here, and when you do, I'd like it to be on something that isn't your father's marble. Wednesday. Wednesday. Behind her, on the padded table, Zoe rolled over and did not wake, and the LEDs in her heels lit the underside of the table once, blue, red, blue, and went out. He stood up, left foot last. He walked to the bar. And the first honest number Naomi Bennett had written in that house was already in ink, already in 2 accounts, already impossible to take back, which meant that somewhere out past the gate, in a car with its nose pointed at the road, a woman with a re-pinned chignon was, at that exact moment, being told by a lawyer that the American physical therapist had spent the night writing. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, my loves, have you ever kept someone's secret off the record because the truth would cost you everything? Have you ever been the only one in the room who saw the pinprick in the cork and stayed quiet because no one would believe you? And when a child told the truth out loud, did the adults call her a liar, or did they finally look? Mark my words. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, silence, and karma, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.